Chag Sameach. Happy second day of Passover. Oh my goodness. So last night, with the second Seder, different group of family this time for us. And at the second Seder, there were some young cousins, unlike the first night for us, some young cousins, some kids under the age of B'nai Mitzvah, adorable, of course. So the youngest one, he was saying, when there are no more kids, am I still going to have to say Ma Nishtana? And so there was a whole discussion around that, beautiful. And a few hours later, we're about to end the Seder. We've had the meal, we're in the Hallel, and the leader of the Seder really kind of gets up for the first time from the table since the Seder begins. And he says, excuse me, I'll be back in just a minute. Just give me a minute. It turns out the little guy, the youngest one, he really wanted to count the Omer, but now he was asleep, and so it was like, okay, a moment of disappointment. They traveled in from the East Coast. Sometimes it happens, but it really drew my attention to this reality that the counting of the Omer is very important. It's very important. So we'll talk a little bit about this today, study a little about this today, and I have actually, much to my surprise and delight, an AI overview from Google. I don't know if any of you have studied the counting of the Omer, but there are a wide variety of things that are said, and the AI overview really did a great job of bringing it together, getting the essence of it and the essentials of it in a coherent way. So yasher koach to Google AI on this, and so we'll learn it together. So the counting of the Omer, Sfirat HaOmer, is a 49-day period, a 7-week period, and where there's a commandment to verbally count, each day between the second night of Passover and Shavuot. It connects the Exodus, meaning Passover, to the receiving of the Torah, Shavuot, serving as a period of spiritual refinement, anticipation, and preparation. And so the sources on this, My Jewish Learning, ReformedJudaism.org, Chabad.org, and also Hillel International. I especially recommend, if for further learning, the article from Hillel International on this. We can talk more about that at Kiddush, but that was a great interpretation as well. So let's jump into some key details about counting the Omer. Start date, counting begins on the second night of Passover, the 16th of Nisan, after dark. Duration, 49 days, 7 full weeks. Method, so this is great. The count is recited standing, usually after evening prayers, or in the case of last night at the end of the Seder, stating both the days and weeks. For example, today is 10 days, which is 1 week and 3 days of the Omer. You can say that in Hebrew or in English. A special blessing is recited before counting all Sfirat HaOmer. You can find that in any Siddur. And significance, it originates from a Torah command from the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, verses 15 and 16, to count from the day the Omer, a barley offering, was brought to the temple, the holy temple in ancient Jerusalem, until Shavuot. Okay, those are our key details. So now, a little spiritual and historical context. So spiritual context, self-refinement. Each of the 7 weeks corresponds to a different emotional attribute or sphira, a different midah to be refined, such as chesed, loving kindness, or gevurah, strength. A lot of details and interpretations on that, but I feel like the AI overview really did a decent job bringing it all in. So also this feeling of anticipation. It marks the journey from physical freedom from Egypt to spiritual liberation, receiving the Torah on Shavuot. And key fact, the meaning of the word Omer, and Omer is an ancient unit of measurement for grain. All right. So now, when you miss a day, this is something that probably many of us have heard about before. If a full day passes without counting the Omer, and there is no opportunity to count during the following day, one may continue and should continue to count on subsequent nights, but without the special blessing. So we can kind of get into the weeds on that. I feel like that one kind of brings up all the feels, because then you've done it wrong and then you have to remember you've done it wrong. So, okay, we'll talk a little bit about more of that later, but technically that's how it is done. Okay. Now I want to bring it back to a little bit of a different interpretation from this book. If you've been here before, especially for holidays, you have seen me talk about this book and heard me talk about this book, Seasons of Our Joy, Rabbi Arthur Waskow. It's really got a novel interpretation of the meaning of the Jewish year that has always hit home for me. I've been studying this book for many years now. And so the big thesis of this book is it's looking at the Jewish year as lunisolar, following not just the cycle of the sun, but also the cycles of the moon, and drawing parallels between the cycle of the sun and the cycle of the moon, because the Jewish calendar not uniquely among humanity, but pretty unusually among humanity, the Jewish calendar brings these two cycles together. Okay, and it has like a little diagram. If I had like a whiteboard and it was not Chag, I'd draw it because I'm into that sort of thing. So we can look at the diagram at Kiddush. But for now, let me share a couple of insights from this book about this, the parallel between the journey from Pesach to Shavuot, the cycle of the sun, and the parallel is from the journey from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, the cycle of the moon. Okay, so let's talk about this for a moment. So Pesach, or Passover, in the spring, the moment of birth and newness, the birth of the Jewish people, of freedom. The flowers rise up against winter. It's a little hippie-tastic, which is why I love it. Okay, the flowers rise up against winter. The Israelites rise up against Pharaoh. Our creativity first rises up against dullness and routine. The great 20th century Jewish thinker Franz Rosenzweig called the Pesach the festival of creation. So then we have Shavuot. 7 weeks and 1 day after Pesach, the onset of summer, not the middle of summer, the very beginning of summer, the peak of nature's glory. It reminds us of the moment at the peak of Sinai when the Jewish people met God face to face in what Jewish tradition called a great wedding ceremony to receive the Ten Commandments and the Torah. In a human life, it represents the peak of early maturity, the onset of adulthood, the moment when a human being's own identity is clear enough that she or he is first able to reach out from oneself to another. In a spiritual process, it is when the glimmering potential becomes a shining actuality. Rosenzweig called it the festival of revelation. So that's Pesach to Shavuot in the cycle of the sun. Now let's look. This is kind of strange to think about these holidays right now, but we'll do it for now for the purpose of our learning. Looking at the journey between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the 10 days, the Yeseret Yemei Teshuvah, the days of return, and this is what that looks like on the cycle of the moon. Okay, at the new moon of Tishrei, the Rosh Hashanah at the top of the year, like Pesach in the sun cycle, Rosh Hashanah is a feast of beginning. According to tradition, it is the anniversary of the creation of Adam, the birthday of the human race. It is the moment for us to begin renewing our spiritual lives, our sense of decency and holiness. It is the moment of rebirth of the moon. So, Rosh Hashanah, Passover, both festivals of beginning. So then, paralleling between Yom Kippur and Shavuot, at the phase of the swelling moon, the 10th of Tishrei, Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, this is the day of intense relationship with God, the one moment when the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies in the ancient temple in Jerusalem. It is the moment of deepest, highest striving. As Sinai, meaning Shavuot, was the moment when the whole Jewish people felt closest to God, so Yom Kippur is the moment when each Jewish individual does. It parallels Shavuot and the cycle of the sun. Indeed, according to tradition, Yom Kippur is the day when God forgave the sin of the golden calf and gave the Israelites the second set of tablets, the second copy of the Ten Commandments. So in this sense, Yom Kippur is also a second Shavuot, a second giving of the Torah. So there's a strong parallel, this very interesting parallel between the 49 days of the Omer on the cycle of the sun in the Jewish year and the 10 days of Teshuvah, the cycle of the moon in the Jewish year. Both intermediate times, the counting of the Omer and the days of Teshuvah, connect one holiday with another holiday. So what does this mean for all of us today? And I think this is really where the AI overview really captured how things have changed, and the meaning of this holiday once upon a time is different from how we experience it now. So it all starts with agriculture. The most ancient level of the counting of the Omer is that the counting linked two moments of harvest, moments on which depended the prosperity of the year. In the Torah, the dating of these moments was imprecise. It depended on the ripening of grain, which of course is going to vary from year to year. Barley is the quickest ripening grain, the most fertile, and so it was the quintessence of the fruitfulness of the land. The barley crop came to ripeness early in the spring, during or just after Pesach. Late in the spring, 50 days later, the wheat crop was ready. And wheat is really the premier grain, not for the gluten-free among us, but through Jewish tradition, wheat is the best grain. Okay, so we're counting from the earliest harvest of the barley, which we love, to wheat, which we really, really love. It's all about that preparation for the harvest and anticipating how fruitful the year is going to be. So now, going more towards our day today, as the connection of the Omer with agriculture grew more remote I don't think that many of us here in Los Angeles are observing a lot of barley or wheat growing in our everyday lives. The sense of the period of the counting of the Omer as one of spiritual growth toward receiving Torah grew stronger. As the saying goes, it was relatively easy to get the Jews out of slavery, but not so easy to get the slavery out of the Jews. So we have this process of spiritual connection, and the fact that we don't live in an agricultural society now as we did before, so there's an opportunity and a necessity to invent new meaning. And so as part of our learning today, I want to highlight a new meaning that's especially important to us as a Jewish community that is proudly Zionist. There are two names for this period of time within the counting of the Omer that I've learned from two different sources. One from Rabbi Endi of Kibbutz Hanaton in Israel, the only Masorti conservative kibbutz in Israel, at least at this time. He calls this period within the counting of the Omer the Yamim Noraim Yisraelim. And then also an alternate name. When I was teaching at D. Toledo High School, which has a lot of Israeli students and families in the valley, they called it the Yom Haz, because this is Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaShoah, Yom HaAtzmaut. And within this cycle, we have a lifting we have some intensity, just like the time of the Omer, and we also have some celebration. And so we start this cycle. It doesn't span, so Rabbi Endi calls it the Yamim Noraim Yisraelim. It's actually a 9-day period and not 10, but still it really does capture the essence of what this period feels like. It starts on 27th of Nisan with Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's not an international Remembrance Day, it's an Israeli Remembrance Day, and I don't know if any of you like me have experienced this in Israel. It's really a profound moment when everyone stops from what they're doing, comes out into the street, gets out of their cars if they're driving, and stops and listens to the siren as a moment of remembrance. It's really quite profound, which kicks off this period within the counting of the Omer. 1 week later, Yom HaZikaron, Israeli Memorial Day, remembering fallen soldiers. And of course, it's very personal, as everyone in Israel knows at least a few fallen soldiers, especially and sadly at this point in our history. And that follows immediately, or it's followed immediately by Yom HaAtzmaut, Israeli Independence Day. It's a day of celebration. It's also a day of reflection. In modern times, we actually recite Hallel on Yom HaAtzmaut as a marker of this celebration. And it's in the Omer season, which is quiet and reflective most of the time, Yom HaAtzmaut is a new period of celebration, which is beautiful. Okay, so what's the upshot for us about this counting of the Omer? It's hard to stay focused on anything, really, for 49 consecutive days, especially when the idea is to not miss a day, and especially when we get into these more spiritual and creative interpretations. We're trying to find a special meaning in each and every day. It's kind of a heavy lift, and so my recommendation, let's get back to the essentials. The idea is we're connecting Pesach, specifically the beginning of Pesach, the Pesach Seder, with Shavuot, the giving of the Torah. We're making this connection, and we're thinking about this connection throughout these 7 weeks. We're on the Jewish calendar, which is lunar and solar. It's pretty amazing. In the fall, we spend a lot of time on our Jewish calendar being attuned to the cycle of the moon in the month of Tishrei. But now in the spring, during this 7-week period, we're attuned to the cycle of the sun. We're moving through different stages of beginning, as Rabbi Waskow says, from birth to maturity. And we have this mitzvah, this instruction, this commandment to count 1 day at a time, 1 to 49, and the mitzvah includes not missing or not messing up. Again, this can be a little bit intimidating or inspire me even boredom and bringing up questions of why, but here's the essence of it. We're setting the intention right now in this 7-week period for the whole solar year ahead. We're establishing habits, patterns, rituals. Even in our urban landscape here in LA, we can see our days getting longer. We can feel the potential at this time of year. And however we count, whether or not we count, it's a perfect time to make sure that we make every day count. Chag Sameach.